Welcome to a short video introduction on growing young and the concept of being part of a learning community or a cohort working through this. It's something that we've been involved with in Scotland over the last 5 years following a visit to California and to the Fuller Youth Institute, who really researched about growing young. We introduced it to Scotland back in 2019, and to start this video I thought it might be helpful just to see a clip about that we produced back in 2019.
To kick off the Growing Young programme in Scotland, about 40 churches sent representatives together to a meeting in Kinross to hear more about what was involved in the programme and to consider whether it's something that their churches might want to take part in. Well, we know there's a lot of people that couldn't be here tonight and weren't able to take part, so we put together this short video to give you a flavour of some of the things that were discussed so that you can get some insight into what's involved in growing young.
I've had an interest in generational characteristics for a long time, really trying to work out how the church connects with folk of different generations. I've done talks on that in numerous different places, and that really has been a passion of mine, I guess, for the last 15 years or so, thinking, how does the church become multi-generational at a time when actually it looks like it's growing old? So that's been a real concern of mine for a long time.
Share a little bit about kind of how we got into this and how we started this journey, and give you a sense for where we've been. And we really started with this question, and a question that I think all of us, it's probably why you're in this room today. What does the future of the church look like? And not just that, but what does the future of your church look like? What does the future of our church look like? And just on a really, really personal level, what's going to happen to my church? What's going to happen to my church after my leadership is done here? But not just that, but a few years from now. And a lot of us are looking around in our congregations and asking that question.
A passion then to have multi-generational churches that underpins all of this work of growing young. Alongside that, though, an awareness that churches in Scotland on the whole are growing older, that younger generations are missing, and an awareness that we need to do something about that. Let me take you to a conversation that I had with a couple of other folk the other night, Matthew Dupree, who used to work for Fuller, and Neil Dougal, who's minister in North Berwick, talking about the importance of facing up to this and doing something about it.
A note I heard in what Matthew was saying, which I wonder if would be helpful to underline, is he talked about how the church was intentional.
No.
It wasn't that none of this happened by accident.
No.
And that it's actually, I think, perhaps some of our congregations, we just hope that if we just keep doing what we're going to do, we've been doing, then somehow things will change. And that note of saying, actually, we need to be quite discern what it is we sense God is wanting us to do, and then make explicit decisions that this is what we're going to work towards. And that's irrespective of the size of what you're doing. So I think that might be worth underlining.
Yeah, I think that's really good. If I can just jump in real quick, this idea that I think we're in a world right now where the world is in a situation where we will never drift as a church into reaching young people. We'll never naturally drift into it. We have to be intentional about it, because the world is on a trajectory of losing young people, to the church, and so, or not to the church, they're leaving the church, our world is in a spot where we just will never drift into it. We have to be really, really intentional about how to do it.
As I said, Matthew was part of the team at Fuller Youth Institute in California who set up Growing Young cohorts. set up after they did research into churches that were bucking the trend in many ways and were holding their young folk or even attracting young people when other churches were losing them. As a result of that research, they produced what we call the Growing Young Wheel. 6 things that were seen quite clearly in churches that were growing young. These 6 things you can see on the screen before you just now. It's about keychain leadership or handing that on to young people. It's about empathy today. It's about taking Jesus' message seriously. It's about warm relationships, prioritising young people and families everywhere, and being the best neighbours. These 6 things were seen in the churches that were growing young, and in many ways I would guess that a number of these, if not all of them, will be seen in measure in your congregation. The thing that Growing Young cohorts provides is an opportunity to focus on these and to say, how do we drill down into them? And we believe that that is important. So we provide teaching around that, around what's important, and space to work through what you can do rather than focus on what you can't, and the support to see it through. These things are important, and so each year we provide 2 or 3 full-day conferences, regular webinars, a coach or mentor for each minister and congregation, and networking opportunities. To give you a flavour of what that means, let me share with you a bit that Pamela Kennedy shared with us. She coached some of the congregations in the first cohort.
Hi there, I'm Pamela and I'm one of the Growing Young coaches. I thought I'd give you a bit of a sense of what we did in the last cohort of Growing Young and also a little bit of an idea of what we do as coaches. So in the last cohort, I worked together with a group of churches in Fife and in Edinburgh. And the big thing I would say that I noticed was the sharpening of sense of direction among the congregations. So each congregation took Growing Young and made it fit with their own context. So each church had a completely different direction and completely different priorities, but they fitted really well with where they were and how God was at work in their congregation. And what that meant was that by the end of the process, they were able to confidently and clearly identify the things that they could be doing and the things that they should be doing that would fit with that direction. So they were looking for those missional opportunities, and they were doing a great job at listening to their local context to try to work out what to prioritise.
A whole lot of things then that we will provide through Growing Young to congregations and potentially to your congregation if you want to be part of it. Starting with an introductory webinar in June 2025, a couple of day conferences in October and November, and webinars, coaching calls and coaching groups drawn together from your presbytery. All things that we would provide through Growing Young to help you to work through this. If you were interested, then you would set up a small team from your congregation, 4 or 5 people who would spearhead this for you, the people who would come along to the conferences and the webinars and begin to work through what it means for you as a congregation. We would hope that that group would include your minister, a younger person, perhaps a parent, and somebody else from the Kirk session. That group really would do the work that's there and help to head things up. They would have an important role to play. It's also important that the Kirk session are on board with us, and we would be planning in March, April to visit Kirk sessions who are interested in being part of this. We'd also want folk to be aware from the very start that there is a financial cost to this. We would be asking for an input of £350 a year from each congregation, but that would cover the full costs of the conferences and different input that you would receive over the time. If you're interested in exploring this further, we are planning regional conferences in February, perhaps an online event as well. As I said, visits to Kirk sessions in March and April, with a launch webinar in June 2025. If you're interested in this, then please speak to your mission officer about this. They will be able to give you all the details and to make the arrangements to take this forward. If you are interested, we would be excited to share with you in this journey as we move together towards where God would take us.